A colony of multifasciatus. This apparent chaos of moving fish is the most organized group of vertebrates you will ever find on the planet, other than ourselves. It's a superorganism composed by highly intelligent individuals. Each one of them cooperates and competes in a complex and multi-layered social structure. At the base level of the society, it's the individual who looks after its own interests. Each female has a territory covering just a few square centimeters of the shellbed. She shares that space with her brood, which can include siblings of different ages. Her territory is part of a male's territory. So the second level of organization is the family, which includes one male, one or more females, and their respective broods. They live in a cluster of shells surrounded by a sealed wall. But each cluster can hold one or more families. The cluster is the third level of the organization. A colony has a large number of clusters. The colony itself is the fourth level of organization. Although these fish can survive even in the absence of shells, their complex social structure can only develop when they are able to form large colonies over shellbeds. They feed on zooplankton as it passes by their territories, and when there are only a few of them, they don't risk getting more than a few centimeters above their shells. On the other hand, when they live in a large colony, the safety in numbers enables them to rise over a meter above their shells to feed, allowing them to find zooplankton in a much larger volume of water. The whole colony moves up and down the water column as thousands of eyes keep vigilant on the comings and goings of all other fish, including predators. When they are feeding well above their shells, their interactions are reduced to a minimum. A much wider range of behaviors can be observed when they are at ground level. Surprisingly, or perhaps not, most of the fighting occurs between females that live in the same cluster of shells, often sharing the same male. The reason for the aggression is not the male, but the fight for territory. These brawls can involve multiple individuals, and the females may form alliances between them. The male often intervenes to put an end to these brawls, because he risks losing a female. Although the females in the cluster have frequent bickerings, they immediately set them aside when there's a provocation from an individual from another cluster. When there are so many individuals, each with its own agenda, so densely packed in such a small area, the behaviors are not easy to perceive and may seem chaotic. But there is intention in every move of every individual in the colony. Their survival depends on their ability to establish a specific relationship with every individual in their own cluster and also in the neighborhood. Although they look all the same to us, each fish knows all the members not only of its own cluster, but also of the nearby clusters. Any fish that doesn't belong is immediately detected and dealt with, even when that happens well above the shells. Being caught off guard away from its shells puts a fish in great danger. These Tilapias pose no threat to the multifasciatus, but predators often travel among them. At any one time, each fish must know exactly where are his shells, and that's the reason why it's not common to find a multifasciatus away from its home. Foreign males are especially unwelcome. The males stay with their parents until they are adults, but soon after, they must find their own territory. It's the most dangerous time of their adult lives. They are often forced to settle in the outer border of the colony, or even further. A female passing by generates a great deal of commotion, with the males trying to persuade her to stay and the females chasing her away. This pressure ends up making sure that the colony not only grows, but also constantly sends scouts to establish new colonies. Although both sexes move silt around, it's predominantly the female's task. The place where the silt is dropped is as important as the place from where it's taken. Most of the silt that is taken out to uncover the shells is used to build the walls that create the border between the clusters. This means that this is a task that generates lots of friction between members of neighboring clusters. These silt walls are obviously not set in stone, and they are constantly being pushed outwards by the members of each cluster. This means that some clusters may get smaller and that create tensions that can lead to members of the cluster being expelled. On the other hand, as a cluster gets larger, it opens up space for new members, and at times, the cluster may get split in two. The silt walls are no man's land to some extent. It's not uncommon to see young fish from other species seeking shelter in the multifasciatus colonies, and they are tolerated, as long as they stay on the wall. The silt walls also serve as garbage dumps. Large pieces of debris are moved around until they eventually are thrown out of the colony borders. These pieces of shells may get in the way when a multifasciatus darts back to his shells in the presence of a predator. Carrying such a heavy load away is often rewarded with increased attention from the opposite sex, and they are well aware of that. The colony attracts many other fish species for various reasons. These Cyanotilapias are silt sifters and are commonly seen passing by. Others often travel with them, trying to pass unnoticed and catch a distracted multifasciatus off guard. The Cyanotilapias in turn attract large predators, like this lattice, a close relative of the Nile perch. When the Nile perch was introduced in Lake Victoria in the 1950s, it caused the extinction or near extinction of several hundred native species, which had disruptive socio-economic effects on local communities. Lake Tanganyika is somehow better prepared to handle these top predators. It is the home to both the smallest and the largest cichlid in the world, the Emperor Cichlid. Everything in this animal screams speed, and although the multifasciatus are not a common part of their diet, they react with extreme caution to their approach. As they grow, they prey on larger fish, such as the Cyanotilapias, which they hunt with sudden attacks, and the multifasciatus have witnessed that many times. These are the main threats to the colony. They are Lamprologus cunningtoni, and they often hunt shell dwellers in small groups. Their approach never goes unnoticed, and the multifasciatus immediately dart into their shells. He singled out one fish that was away from home, and he tries to peek through the shells to find him. He pretends to go away, and then comes back, and waits for the multifasciatus to come out, while holding his breath. The life of a multifasciatus isn't worth much when he's away from his shells. There are predators living inside the colony itself. This is a dwarf Lamprologus compressiceps. Its size allows him to use shells as a refuge and breeding site. He doesn't prey on the adult multifasciatus. He only hunts the young ones, and they stay with their parents until they reach maturity, never straying from their shells. Although he preys on their young, he is truly a part of the colony. He has a shell that he takes care of in the colony, and he even helps with heavier landscaping, The greatest benefit the colony receives from his presence is in the defense against intruders. Overall, his presence is tolerated, and it prevents more damage to the colony than it causes. He has a few bickerings with the multifasciatus, but not more than they have among themselves. This series was shot mainly without human presence, and although there were several cameras pointed at the colony, none of them captured the reason that managed to put the whole colony on edge. Not even the predators, the emperors, nor I, could leave them this petrified.